Hi, everybody. I'm Reed Aronson. I'm a partner at Aronson, Majewski, and Sloan. We're a divorce law firm here in Manhattan, and this is the Unhitching Hour, how the law works when your relationship doesn't. I am here with my lovely wife/assistant/co-host, Vanessa.
Hello.
Thank you all for joining us and coming to join us on our very first episode. We're very excited about this new project that we've taken on. So what is the Unhitching Hour, and why are we sitting here and why are we talking right now? I think people underestimate when you think about all the ways that the law affects us, right? And now, of course, with everything that's going on, you know, we think about in terms of criminal justice, in terms of taxes, in terms of everything. I'm not sure that there's any aspect of the law that has as much of a direct impact on as many people as family laws, how the law treats families. Whether it's about the rights that you have when you're married, whether it's about child custody, everybody either has experienced it or knows somebody who has experienced an intersection with the law on this issue, right? On how they raise their kids, on how they, their property gets split up if they get divorced, on how they treat each other when they're married. And I think that is, by the way, that's our the third member of our team, Gilda.
Hi, Gilda.
Third member of our team, Gilda. But how that all works in our lives. And I think people have a lot of misconceptions about both misconceptions and just non-conceptions, if that makes sense, right? That both thank you. Vanessa's a very good active listener, you'll notice. Both misconceptions and non-conceptions, right? Things they don't even think about, and also things that they don't really understand and think about are wrong. So I hope by this series we'll be able to give people maybe a little bit better of a sense, and I'm going to adjust the camera right here like a very big pro that I am because it was not quite straight. Just a slightly better sense of people of what the law does and how it works and how it affects people's lives. And I hope that you'll enjoy it. Again, I'm Reed Aronson. I'm a divorce lawyer, and this is the Unhitching Hour. So,
Hi.
Vanessa, would you like to tell something about yourself?
Something about myself.
Yes.
Well, I'm Vanessa Aronson, and I'm married to this guy right here, who is a divorce lawyer. In fact, he changed to divorce law like the month that we got engaged, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a fun fact about us. I'm here because I am not a lawyer. So I think Reed sometimes, or often rather, at cocktail parties, people ask him about his job. You know, they love to ask hypothetical questions or talk about big cases that they've seen in the news. And what will happen is he'll sort of share what actually happened in the case. And even though I'm not a lawyer, I like to be very opinionated and I like to be right. So I end up saying what I think the outcome should be. So this really isn't like a different way for us to spend our Thursday evening, actually.
No, it's oddly normal
it's pretty
for
normal
us.
Way. But so that's what I'm here for. Is he's not told me anything about what we're going to discuss today, so I'll sort of see what I can make of it from the first time. But fun facts: I am 6.5 months pregnant with our first. And our first furry baby is right there, Gilda Jane, who will probably, perfect timing.
Up on the couch.
And she might make some more appearances or vocal appearances throughout. But yeah, I think that's about me.
All right, great. So again, I'm Reed Aronson because the things on the internet about these things said constantly introduce yourself, so I'm going to constantly introduce myself. Again, professional Facebook live cast. And this is the Unhitching Hour. So here's what the format's going to be. I'm going to describe a case to Vanessa.
Okay.
And I'm going to say who the parties are, I'm going to say what they did, and I'm going to say what it is they're in court looking to get. And then I think, Vanessa, we're going to talk about what you think should be the result, right? What based on your intuition and sense of fairness and fair play, and we'll talk through it. I'll eventually say what it is that the court did and why. We'll talk about that a little bit, and we'll maybe get a little bit of a better understanding of why the law does what it does, and why maybe it's not necessarily settled, and we're still trying to figure it out. Anyway, so the case is called Christopher YY versus Jessica ZZ. And so Jessica and Nicole are a married couple, and they want to have a baby. And obviously they need some help in order to have that baby. But unfortunately, because of their financial circumstances or what have you, going and finding going to like a sperm bank and that kind of a thing is not something they can do. They need help. But fortunately, they have a family friend named Christopher.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So.
And what was Jessica's wife's name?
Nicole. So Jessica's wife is named Nicole. And by the way, this is Reed Aronson of the Unhitching Hour. Thank you for bearing with us. So Jessica and Nicole want a baby. They have this family friend named Christopher. He has a partner. They're sitting at dinner one night, and they say, hey, we have this issue. Do you think you could help us? And they have a number of conversations over the course of some time. Christopher eventually agrees that he will help them conceive a child.
Okay.
And they sit down at a kitchen table and they write out an agreement. And just for the sake, so the agreement is not legally binding. Just because of the nature of the law, you don't need to worry too much about that. Just letting you know that. But the agreement says Christopher is not going to have any sort of. Christopher is not going to have. Oh, is the thing back on now?
Yeah, we're on.
No, it's not here.
No.
Sorry. Christopher is not going to have any sort of relationship not a relationship, but he won't have any rights over the child.
Okay.
He won't be able to get custody of the child. And Jessica and Nicole are not going to go and ask him for child support. All right? So that's the agreement that they sign up to, and they have that agreement.
Okay, no rights, no child support.
No rights, no child support. So, thank you, Shelley, for letting us know we see you. I see you. I see you too, Shelley. We're on. Everybody's telling us we're on. This is, again, highly professional show, whatever we're doing. So they try a couple of times with Christopher's genetic material. Nicole administers she does the insemination.
Okay.
And after a couple of tries, they conceive, and Jessica has a baby.
Okay.
And the relationship seems okay for some period of time.
Okay.
But then after a few months, Christopher apparently changes his mind. He feels like he is not getting enough time with as much time with the baby as maybe he thought he was going to get.
Okay.
And he files a lawsuit in court seeking basic custody of the little baby, and a declaration that says he's the father.
Okay.
Saying, I am the father of this child.
Is that a legal thing? Like a declaration of
Yeah, so
paternity?
a declaration of paternity. So I want a declaration that I'm the father, and I have. It would be helpful to have written bullets so people can later follow on. Thank you, Whitney. I'll keep that under advisement. So that's the rule that what he's seeking, and obviously they come back and they say, well, we don't want to have that.
Yeah.
And what he says is, well, what Christopher says is, well, the first thing we should do is we should have a DNA test. I want to take a DNA test to prove that I'm the father, genetically.
Okay.
And they say, on the other side, so Jessica and Nicole, say, we don't need that. We don't need that at all. So let's forget, we don't even need a DNA test, because even if he's genetically the father, we don't care. And I'm going to do a quick recap of all of this.
Yeah, we'll do a recap.
So Jessica and Nicole are a couple. They enlist Christopher
as a sperm donor.
as effectively a sperm donor, but not through like a sperm bank formal.
He's just a friend.
He's a friend who helps them out, and ultimately he becomes. So that's what it happens. So now we've got this situation where there's a child who's genetically his, but who arguably doesn't really have any relationship to him in terms of whether he's their father.
Okay. Can I ask a few questions? So first, like, what is actually the law in terms of DNA So if they had a DNA test, but we already know that Christopher is the biological father, like, by law, what is he entitled to? Even if there weren't this agreement, if he were just a baby daddy, what is he entitled to?
He'd be entitled to seek custody if he's just a baby daddy, right? Baby daddies seek custody all the time.
Okay. So he's entitled to custody, but it would also be responsible for child support if he were financially in a situation.
I guess if what you're asking me is, like, let's say that this was just a normal, a man and a woman have a relationship and there's a child, then he would be entitled to some custody rights and he would be obligated to pay some child support.
Okay. Now, you also said at the beginning of the scenario, so we've got Jessica and Nicole, a same-sex couple who want to conceive a child, who go to their friend and ask him to be the sperm donor. Which, like, doesn't seem like...
No, I don't know how it came up, right? It
doesn't say,
like, I don't know if it was just a natural thing where they said they wanted it.
But it was like an understanding. And it seems like a perfectly natural thing. I mean, there's movies about that all the time, right? Like, that's a very common thing that you read about or watch in a plot line in TV and movies.
Sure.
You said they had an agreement, a written agreement, but it wasn't legally binding. Why is that? Why isn't, like, I just assumed if I make a contract with somebody, then that's legally binding.
Because in New York, contracts regarding, there are very narrow circumstances in which contracts regarding the raising and the support of children you can make in advance.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So if let's set the same-sex marriage angle aside, and let's just say it was two people, right? There was a single woman. She knew she had a buddy, and she said, "Look, get me pregnant, and I won't make you pay any child support."
Right.
You can't make that agreement and have it be enforceable.
Really?
Right?
Like,
and have it be binding. And have it be binding.
Can you never do that? Like, is it just that they missed a few steps? Like, they didn't get lawyers, they didn't get it somehow, like, a stamp of approval put on it?
Let's say it's a complicated question, and the answer is they didn't do all of the things that they would have had to do to try and get something like that to be, again, legally binding. Is just like I walk into court and I say, I got a contract, so I win no matter what.
Right.
Right? Now, again, we're asking sort of from your sense of fairness and what you think ought to happen, whether that matters. Now, there's another little wrinkle, which is that they destroyed the agreement sometime after the child was born, but before this case went into court.
Why?
No idea.
And who's the they? Didn't they each have copies of it?
So there's a quick question that my sister Whitney asked. Whitney, the answer is yes, but you need to do that it has to be with doctors. Sorry. She asked, can you do that through a sperm bank? And the answer is yes, you can do it through a sperm bank, but there's a very specific statute in New York that again, sperm bank donors, the same issue. There's a very specific statute in New York that deals with that in a formal sperm bank type setting. Now, these people can't get the protection of that because the rule requires you to go to a formal sperm bank and have doctors do it, and that's not what happened here, right? It was sort of a kind of a do-it-yourself thing, and the way that Jessica and Nicole explained that was they just couldn't afford that. It was too much. It was too difficult. It was too burdensome, so they didn't want to do it that way. Instead, they had a friend do it, and Nicole, again, was the one who inseminated her with with Christopher's, I guess we don't know his last name, with Christopher YY's XY.
Well, the interesting thing is, like, you think if you're in that situation that actually going through a family friend would be preferable to a sperm bank, right? Because then you would actually, like, the person, you could give the child access to their biological father, which can be, like, really important medically or really important just for a child's development. So it's interesting that, like, there's no set up way to do something that I think most of us, again, we see this on, I feel like this is like such a common plot line on TV shows and movies or books or whatever, that someone's like, we need sperm, let's ask a friend. So it's so weird that there's, like, no legal way to actually go about it?
Not in that way. It's very hard.
Wow. Okay. Here's another question I have. So, Jessica and Nicole, I don't know when this case was or where.
2018.
2018.
Mm-hmm.
So are they legally married?
They are legally married in the state of New York.
Okay. I thought that when a baby is born, like, so we're expecting a baby in September, and I thought, like, in the hospital when I give birth, that you, like, automatically, if I say that you are the father, like, that would be on my birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Or not on my birth, it would be on our child's birth certificate. We don't need a DNA test because we're legally married,
Mm-hmm.
and I will say Reed is the father, so, like, automatically you're now on the birth certificate. So Jessica and Nicole were legally married by law. She had a baby. What does it say on the birth certificate?
It says on the, I believe it's, I don't actually know, but I believe that it says that Nicole is the other parent on the birth certificate.
Okay, so to me, like, that's pretty big if it says Nicole is the other parent. And then legally, in order for Nicole to have rights, does she need to adopt the baby?
She never did.
But would she need to?
I don't know the answer to that.
And if she adopted the baby, like, do you need to? So, if you're saying that the owner of the male genetic material is by law the father, if another parent wants to adopt the child, like what if the father's not in the picture? Does that child not get to be adopted? Can you have three parents by law?
It's a weird question, but so
that's
you
the
asked
same
this question.
question.
When you just asked, are children
Right.
limited? That is a very difficult question that is beyond the scope of today's thing. Let's just assume, for the purposes of today, the answer is no.
Okay.
That a child has two legal parents.
Okay. Like, cause again, like, I imagine there are situations, same-sex couples or not, where maybe the DNA, the owner of the DNA of the sperm might not even be in the picture. Does that mean you can't adopt that child? Or what about children who are abandoned, right? Like, are they not able to be adopted unless we track down who their biological parents are? Like,
Well, normally the answer
nuts.
is that the biological parent would have to get some sort of notice, right? A notice and an opportunity to be heard, right? And come in and say, "Oh, judge, I object to the adoption because I still love my child and I still want to raise it."
That happens?
Sure.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, but that's not what happened here, right?
Right.
Nobody's trying to adopt a kid.
Okay. Well, and then I guess that's, like, the other thing. Like, I'm trying to think of what legal protections Jessica and Nicole could have taken,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they made the written document, which I would have thought would be enough. Like, it shows that you planned this and you wanted to have sort of a plan in place about what the child, or, you know, whose rights and responsibilities are, right? And then again, if the birth certificate, if Nicole is listed as the second parent on the birth certificate, that feels like a second precaution, or protection for your child. And I guess I might argue that maybe the extra mile would have been to formally adopt. But then, can you adopt a child if you're already on the birth certificate?
So that's another question.
Oh.
So let me change the biological father cannot easily
wait.
waive his right before the birth, but he can do so after. Again, that's a complicated question that we don't have to worry about here because he didn't do anything after, right? The only thing he did after was he got upset and he filed to seek custody. So he didn't waive anything afterwards. So what do you think should happen? Do you think that there should be a DNA test done? And do you think that he should be able to seek custody of this child?
Do they both agree that there was
Yes.
Like, do they both agree?
There is no dispute as to these basic facts, right? He does not argue that the agreement, that they didn't sign that agreement. He doesn't argue that he had any other understanding than the one they did. He agrees this was our understanding. I was gonna be the sperm donor, and maybe I'd be around and be a fun uncle or something. But he was not a funny uncle, a fun uncle. He was just gonna be around and he was gonna be around, but he was not going to be the father. This was going to be their child.
And he agreed that when he gave the sperm, that was the agreement.
Yes.
And because then that also sort of to me feels like when you give over something, they say don't loan money to people, just assume it's better if it's just a gift, because you'll never get it back. I feel like it's sort of the same premise. If that was the understanding when he bestowed the sperm on his friend,
gross way of putting it, but all right.
if that was his understanding, I feel like you're done. Just like if you lend money to someone and you don't do all of the legal issues around it, sorry, Charlie, you've parted ways. Or if you sell something on eBay, you're done. Nope. You don't get to get it back.
So you think no? He's out of luck.
I think if he proved, if they could prove, and that's where that written document feels really shady that it doesn't exist anymore. But if I were the judge, not knowing what the actual law says, I would say if I were the judge, not knowing what the law actually says, I would say we should try to find the most accurate analysis or representation of what both parties understood to be the agreement at the time of that he gave his sperm away.
Let me ask you something. Would your analysis change if, let's say that in addition to what was going on here, Jessica and Christopher also had a sexual relationship?
Wait, did that really happen?
That was not. I'm adding a wrinkle. I'm adding a wrinkle. Also did that, and they are not sure.
Oh, also had a sexual relationship
with the mother.
Wait, what?
Christopher also had a sexual relationship with the mother, right?
Right.
So we don't know necessarily whether it was because of the artificial insemination. We don't know which one.
Okay. Sure, maybe. Well, but no. But did he still know? Even if that happened, so you're saying that the agreement was he was going to be the sperm donor, and then one steamy night they had a sexual encounter.
Exactly, and we don't know when
their
she conceived.
passion just. So is the sperm that was given in this?
Let's say genetic material.
Why are we not allowed to say sperm?
I don't know. It's just we got an ooh from Shelley Gazes, so we're trying to be.
Shelley, why are you
PG.
trying to censor our program? So the question is the genetic material that was given in passion different than the genetic material that was given
or
in
we
a
just don't
sterile
know.
environment?
We just don't know.
I don't know. I feel like it just doesn't matter if he knew that they were trying to conceive. And
what if it wasn't a same-sex couple? What if it was a man and a woman, and the man was, it was the bestowed comment. Sorry, Shelley. I won't use the word bestowed. I'm sorry, that set you off. What if it was a man? What if it was a man and a woman, and the man was not fertile? Would your analysis be different?
I'm really confused. So
Nicole is Norman.
Oh yeah. No, I don't. I think it's the same thing. Oh, but you're saying if they had an affair? I think if your relationship with the person is with the understanding that they are looking for genetic material to conceive a child in their relationship, and if that has been fully articulated and I think ideally written down and certified or whatever way to make it legal, I feel like that should be the.
Now let me ask you let me shift it just a little bit. Let's say Nicole was out of the picture.
Yeah.
Okay? Nicole decides I'm heading out of town.
Yeah.
and it was Jessica suing Norman. No, sorry, excuse me, not Norman. Jessica suing Christopher for child support. Should she be able to get child support from Christopher?
Again, no. If we can, I mean, that's where I would have thought you would have more of the problems, right? That's why I would think that the responsible way to do this would be to have like a written contract of some sort, so that years later you can't go back to the sperm donor and say you owe me all this child support.
And what if we take away the written contract? Let's say that there was just sort of an understanding, but not really, and maybe we don't know. Maybe there's a dispute as to what exactly the agreement was.
Yeah.
What do you think then?
Then I think it's up to the party who doesn't want either the other parent to have the rights or themselves to have the responsibility to prove that it was an agreement. Okay. But it would be hard to prove, right?
Okay.
If you didn't have one, and if you had emails back and forth saying like that, you could piece together to show what the understanding was.
I'm assuming you don't have any of that.
But if you don't have any of that,
it is Jessica's word against Christopher's.
And if they both agreed that, like, oh yeah, we did have this agreement.
I'm telling you, so the hypothetical I'm giving you is they don't agree. They have a totally different understanding.
Then that's totally different. That's why I feel like you do need some protections in place for both the rights and responsibilities of the child. Actually, one more question I have. What is his rationale? Because in this case, you said Christopher agreed that at the time of the bestowing.
So I'll tell you his rationale.
He said at the time of his bestowing, he understood the agreement to be that he would have no rights or responsibilities as the biological father. He would be in the child's life, and that was it. What did he? No, answer my question first.
Okay.
Why did he change his mind? He's like, oh, I just decided I want something different now.
The reason he changed his mind was because he felt. I'll give you some facts, and these are actually facts from the opinion. He felt that they were not taking good care of the daughter. He felt that he was supposed to have time with the daughter or the child, even if he didn't. He thought he was supposed to have time with them, and he didn't get it. And he thought that they were not fit. And in fact, between the time that this case was filed first and the time that it was decided, ACS, which is effectively the Child Protective Services in New York, took the daughter away and put her in foster care.
Oh, wow.
So does that change your outlook of how this should go?
Ugh. I mean, and I saw.
So we have a question from Scott, and Scott asks whether it's advisable for same-sex partners to individually adopt a child in a marriage. I like free lawyering. The answer is complicated. It's something what we're talking about now, and I'll get to it, and I'll hopefully answer your question at least a little bit in the explanation of what the court did. The court decided, and this was the appeals court in Albany, New York, ultimately decided that no, he does not get to seek custody.
Wow. And
no, there will be no blood test, and no, he does not get to seek custody. And could one argue that he should have known they were unfit before he bestowed? That's a good question. That's a very good question. And what the court decided was based on something called the presumption of legitimacy. And the presumption of legitimacy goes back a very long way, it might go back all the way to English common law, right? And the notion is that we will assume that in an intact marriage, a child born in an intact marriage is the child of both of the two people in the marriage.
Oh, I was right. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that is the presumption that New York applies, and in some cases it's been called the strongest presumption known by the law. It's very hard to overturn, but it's not impossible. Now the notion is, right, so think about, it's not 2020, it's 1920. It's before we have genetic tests, it's before we have paternity tests. I'm not even sure if they had blood tests matching, that kind of thing. So all you're doing, the only way that you can know is by, hoping. You have to hope that it works out. It's very hard to prove paternity.
Yeah.
But there are all sorts of negative implications, right? Of not being a legitimate child, right?
In 1920.
In 1920.
Okay.
In 1920.
We're still in our 1920.
Of being a bastard, right? That's the word bastard is what that comes from. There are inheritance issues. There are just social issues. So the notion is we don't want children to be bastards. We don't want that. Mm-hmm. And so unless you really, 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 really prove that the man who was the husband could not possibly be the father, we're going to say that they're the father.
Okay.
And that has carried over even to today when you have genetics testing.
Right.
But
it doesn't have to be the man anymore. It's like even
that's the interesting question. Right, so what the court does is to say, look, if this was an opposite sex couple, we would be applying the presumption of paternity,
right,
and we would not allow a genetics test. We wouldn't even look at the DNA, because we would say, look, we want children to be part of couples. We don't want to have questions about who the father is. So we're going to assume that this is the case.
Yeah. And
since we have marriage equality, and we are supposed to treat same-sex couples the same as we treat opposite-sex couples, we're going to apply the same presumption. So this child was born in an intact marriage. We're not even going to look and figure out who the genetic father is, right? Because it doesn't matter. Because we're going to assume it. Now here's what I think is the interesting, and let me ask you. So we have that. Again, if you have a regular case, right, where you have the classic traditional marriage, where you have a man and a woman, in that case, the man could turn around and say, let me prove how I couldn't possibly be the father.
Yeah.
Let me prove how I couldn't be the father. I was in Europe for the year that the child was conceived. I'm incapable of fathering children. Mm-hmm. We haven't had intercourse in however long, so it's impossible for us to have been for me to be the father. Mm-hmm. That would overcome the presumption of paternity. Let's say Nicole, in this case, doesn't want to be the father of the parent of this child. She doesn't want to be this child's mother. How would she go about getting rid of the presumption of paternity? Mm. Because obviously she's not the genetic parent. Given where we are with technology, and that may someday change, but right now, given where we are with that, she's not the genetic parent, so how could she turn around and prove it? So in a way, isn't applying the presumption of paternity to gay couples the same way that we apply it to straight couples almost unfair to those parents who don't want to be parents?
So you're saying, if a same-sex couple were estranged, mm-hmm. and one of the members of the couple had a child, that the law just assumes that the other parent is now legally responsible and has the legal rights mm-hmm. of being a parent, even if they aren't together anymore. If they just, for whatever reason,
they're still married, right?
Divorced.
If they're still married. Yeah. Not if they're divorced, if they're still married.
I don't know. I guess, part of me also wants to look at this through the lens of, what's best for the child. I think especially when you brought up in this particular case that the child looked like, maybe Jessica and Nicole weren't fit parents. Now I'm wondering, wouldn't it have been in the better interest of the child to have a third parent available? So thinking of that, keeping that in mind and thinking of this presumption of paternity, you said called?
Yeah, the presumption of legitimacy.
Of legitimacy, the presumption.
Sometimes called the presumption of paternity, but in here obviously it doesn't make sense.
Presumption of legitimacy is through the lens of what's best for the child. I mean, isn't it best for the child to be able to legally claim who their parent is? Especially if we go back to sort of then the sperm bank mm-hmm. scenario, right? Because now if a child were
Was Christopher the one who called CPS, or was it an outside party? I
oh,
don't know
we're
the answer to
making
that
a-
question. I don't know the answer to the question. That's a good one, but I don't know the answer. But it's not something they raise here.
I like how we're making this
So-
into a soap opera.
so-
Wait,
And the court, by the way, so the court, just so you know, so we can respond to that, the court says that doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what kind of parents they were. First of all, because we didn't know that was going on when you first filed suit, so that wasn't clearly the reason. It wasn't that they were in foster care then, and also because whether you're somebody's parent or not, it doesn't depend. You don't have to be a good parent to be a parent. A lot of bad parents. You're still their parent. And now maybe you lose your parental rights because you're unfit, but that's a separate question, right? That's a question two doors down the line.
Yeah. I don't know. I think in some ways, maybe the fairest way to do it is that the presumption of legitimacy ends up not being able to be disproven, whether you're a same-sex couple or not, right? I think there's also, especially because we have marriage equality, I think there's a bit of intentionality that comes with the choice to be married or the choice not to be married, right? And a lot of people, it's a little bit blurry now these days about is it worth it to be married or is it not worth it to be married? Mm-hmm. There could be tax implications or financial implications of either being married or not being married. And so part of me wonders if maybe that's just one of the implications, is if you're married and your spouse has a child. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's a good place to leave it. Now a couple of people joined in, but this is a good place to leave it there. Thank you, Vanessa, for that lovely discussion. If anybody out there, so I'm Reed Aronson. I am a divorce lawyer. I am a partner at Aronson, Mayeski and Sloan here in New York. This is our new show, The Unhitching Hour. Thank you for watching. Please like the video. I don't know what else you do because I'm not that good. Thank you for bearing with us as we had some technical difficulties.
Are there any last questions maybe people want to...
Are there any last questions? If you don't feel comfortable, if you have some questions and you don't feel comfortable asking them on Facebook Live, unhitchinghour@gmail.com. Please write in. We'll try and answer it. If you have a future topic that you'd like us to go over on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Again, unhitchinghour@gmail.com. UNHITCHINGHOUR.
That's a lot of H's.
It's a lot of H's.
At
gmail.com. Again, I am Reed Aronson. This is Vanessa Aronson. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.